Hello, and welcome to this Talks at Google virtual event. My name is Ben Freed. I'm Google's Chief Information Officer, and I'm one of the leads for our New York site. A bit of a logistics announcement. When you think of questions throughout the event, please be sure to add them to the live chat on the right. Today, I am really excited to introduce today's guest. She made her Broadway debut in 2015 in the smash hit Hamilton, after originating the role of Eliza off-Broadway at the Public. Her performance off-Broadway earned her a Lucille Lortel Award, and on Broadway garnered her a Tony Award nomination and a Grammy Award win. Aside from the obvious theater credits, she also has 3 films coming out this year. The Broken Hearts Gallery will be out on August 7th in the US, and the one and only Ivan and Over the Moon are coming out later this year. So I'm about to welcome Phillipa Soo onto the screen, but before I do that, I think we have a little teaser to show. I get a chill every time I see that. Phillipa Soo, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I also just got chills watching that.
Hey, listen, to open things up, I thought just to check in, we're in the midst of a pandemic. How have you been spending your time now? I can't imagine that things have been going according to whatever the plan was.
No, it certainly has been a moment of learning and paring down and getting back to simpler things, and also at the same time a lot of self-examination personally, and I think on a national level.
Yeah.
But we're good. I'm with my husband in New York, and we just adopted a puppy.
Oh, what kind? What's the breed?
It's a mixed breed. We rescued her from a place called Bark Animal Rescue.
Oh, wow.
And she's a handful, but she's so fun, and it's nice to have something to sort of like put your mind and heart into.
So has having a new dog shaped your quarantine routine?
Oh, yeah. I mean, before the dog, it was like, okay, so we can't go to work, and, the theater's definitely not coming back for a while. So let's really embrace the time. Let's get up late. Let's have a coffee. And now it's very early mornings, very scheduled, up at the dog run, 7 a.m. So it's refreshing. We'll say that.
Wow. Yeah, I guess there's value in having to have a schedule, right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I had a matter of curiosity. My team saw that there's some early credits for you in some theater productions where you're listed as Pippa. What can you tell me about that?
Well, Pippa is my nickname.
Huh.
It's not as common in the United States as it is in, say, England. Phillipa is a very popular or more popular name there, but Pippa's just it's like Mike and Michael, it's just a nickname. But I went by Pippa growing up, and my friends still call me Pippa, but there's a point in an actor's life when you sort of have to choose what is your name, because they're going to print it on headshots, and it's going to be your accredited name and all that kind of stuff. So Phillipa Soo, which is my full name and my real name, is what I go by professionally. But, yeah.
So speaking, I guess, on the topic of early nicknames, I'm really curious. I think many people are really curious. How did you get the theater bug? Has that always been, has drama, acting, singing, have they always been part of who you are and always been interests?
Definitely. So I grew up, my first exposure to performance and the arts was mostly from my mother and my grandmother. So my mother, she worked for a couple of theaters in Chicago, and we would go see plays all the time. And it was kind of the thing that we would do as a family. We'd go to Chicago to see a play. And also my grandmother on my father's side, she was a pianist and a painter. And so I took piano lessons at a very young age, and also because of that got into dance, because every little girl in the town that I grew up in is either doing soccer or doing dance or something like that. And I chose dance because I was not very coordinated with sports. So I started taking dance when I was about like 3. I was very little.
Wow. Wow.
And that, like, you know, sort of evolved into, I would sing around the house and my parents would be like, oh, that's interesting. And would do performances like on my coffee table with my brother. And so I think it was very obvious very early on that that was something that was interesting to me.
So it sounds like you were a triple threat from super early on.
I mean, I thought I was.
So with all that early exposure to musical theater, to music and dance, any favorite productions, any favorite musicals or anything like that as a child?
Well, when I've talked about this before in interviews, but my first recollection of seeing a show and sort of being transported and having that, like, that epiphany as someone watching it being like, ooh, like, I really love this, was this tiny, tiny little black box theater that my mother took us to see a production of The Tempest.
Oh.
And, you know, there was some nudity in it, and it definitely was like not necessarily appropriate for someone my age to be seeing it, but it was so beautiful. And I was like transported, and, you know, what I'm sure was actually just like very cheap material that whatever the theater could find to make costumes with, you know, they were making these costumes. But I just remember seeing this woman, and she had, you know, she was playing like one of the fairies or the island, what you call them? Yeah, I guess they're fairies. But I just remember like the beautiful fabric that she was wearing, and I was just in love with this image and in love with this place where these stories could come to life. And I felt like it was just for me, and I was just so taken by that. And so, like, that has stuck with me my entire life. And also, growing up, we would go see a lot of shows at the Steppenwolf Theater.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, not a lot of like Disney musicals, but a lot of like hardcore drama plays that the Steppenwolf Theater was putting on. I saw a lot of productions there. And that was my first exposure to seeing live theater.
Wow. And I have seen a recent video you did that's on YouTube, you and your husband.
Yeah.
And as part of the fundraiser for the Steppenwolf Theater, right? It was Over the Rainbow and Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. It was beautiful. Everyone, if you haven't seen it yet, go find it. It's on YouTube. Really.
Thank you. Yes, we love a mashup. That's like my hobby, is making mashups.
Really? Any other mashups you want to tell us about?
Oh my gosh. It's like one of those things that, like, I play with it around in my brain, and then when it hits me, it's sort of just like, bam, that's it. And so in some concerts, I've done a version of Children Will Listen, mashed up with Dear Theodosia, which is really beautiful.
Wow. Oh, man.
So,
well, I'm going to look on YouTube regularly to see if that ever.
Yeah, we'll try and get it there.
So you grew up in Illinois, going to theater in Chicago, and point of pride for me as a lifetime New Yorker to see you went to school at Juilliard. Hooray. Also, a matter of curiosity, what was that training? What were can you tell me what you think the big influences were on you from going to Juilliard?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, it was definitely right and perfect for me, because I thrived in an environment where, you know, it was smaller groups, and I was living in New York and in my own apartment by the time I was 19, and I was like ready for that. Whereas I know a lot of kids that age are like, you know, I want to go to a campus and I want to have that experience. But it just felt so right, because I auditioned and did not think that I would get in. But I auditioned, and I remember at this, I don't know if you know about this, but there's like common auditions for all of these schools in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah, they do it in a couple other places, but like during like college admission season, all of the art schools have like these huge audition weekends where they all like are in different rooms, and you sign up for your audition for each college, and you go from room to room, and there's kids everywhere. It's like it's very intense.
I was gonna say that sounds like the most stressful thing in the world for a 17-year-old or 18-year-old or something like that.
Totally. But also at that age, you're like, oh, okay, this is just what it is. But looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I've never experienced anything else like that. But I auditioned for a bunch of schools that same weekend at the Palmer House in Chicago. And my mom was with me, and, you know, we would have my little schedule, and Juilliard was my last one. And it was like a huge snowstorm that day. And so I had sort of like, I was like, okay, I'm fried at this point. So I'm just going to go in and be myself, because that's the most I can do, right? But I was really just so taken aback by the amount of kindness that I experienced from the moment that I got there. And I felt like my experience in working with some of the faculty and working with some of the other auditioners, you know, I really felt like it was an exploration and not just an audition. And I was really excited by that. And I just enjoyed the experience. And so I was like, well, this was great. We'll see what happens. And then I got in, and I was so excited, and I had an amazing time there. I got to work with some incredible people that were my classmates. You're only there with 18 people.
It's that small, 18.
Yeah, 18 drama students are accepted each year. Yeah. So it was so beautiful getting to know those people, and some of them are my really good friends to this day. And the teachers and the curriculum, I mean, it's really, I think the biggest thing that I learned being there, you know, because I went in being like, I want to be like a great actor that can do a lot of things. And, you know, I want to really like hone in on that craft. But what I discovered was that, you know, it's not about being able to do everything. It's about being able to have tools and to know when to use these tools and know which tools are your strongest. And really, like, once you leave that place, be your own teacher. And I learned a lot about failure there. I learned a lot about being able to research and how to educate yourself as an actor. So it was a really beautiful time there for me.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible. I think it says a lot about your talent to be one of 18 selected for that program, but clearly no surprise, but yet another confirmation of what we've all seen. Changing subjects a little bit, I saw an article in Oprah's publication that where you'd shared a video of a girl on Twitter, a small girl on Twitter, who saw herself in your performance of Eliza. There was it seemed like an amazing moment about the power of representation, right? And I think there's a lot to go into there, because there's representation in the theater and on Broadway, and clearly something you're aware of and you've thought a lot about. I mean, starting from the beginning, did you ever have feelings growing up? You went to a lot of theater. Did you see people like yourself? Did you wonder why you didn't see people like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, you know, it's that amazing thing about kids is that we don't come into the world being aware of that. And that's something that's learned. And certainly I was aware of it in my own way, because I'm mixed race. I'm half Chinese and half white. So experiences at, you know, family reunions and being the odd one out, kind of, in both ways, but also belonging too. So, you know, my experience was unique in that way, and I'm grateful for it, because it really, like, I think there were a lot of like hard conversations, or not even hard conversations, but just interesting conversations that were being had at an early age about, you know, the difference of cultures, etc., and stuff like that. But certainly in terms of seeing myself on a stage or in a movie or stuff like that, I didn't really see that until I think like the earliest thing I can remember is seeing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Ang Lee, yeah.
By Ang Lee, and or directed by Ang Lee, and I just felt such a strong connection because I had never seen like a big movie that had not only was being spoken in Chinese, but were all Chinese actors or all Asian actors portraying these Chinese characters and this Chinese story, and a Chinese director, and I was really aware of that and really excited by that. And that was probably like the first time that I was sort of like, oh, I'm connecting with this because I see myself in that way. And then, you know, I think so many young Asian women of my generation feel this way, but Lea Salonga was one of the first women, one of the first Asian actresses that I sort of like clung to because she was like one of the first. And so, you know, I think when I think about it now and seeing Jenna and remembering myself at that time, you know, it's there's a reason that it's the reason that it's so exciting and the reason that it brings us so much joy is because it's right. Like that's where we should be going. Like we should be following this joy and doing as much as we can to chase it and make sure that it happens because it hasn't always been that way. And I think the more that we can make room for unique stories, for unique faces, for unique bodies, you know, we can stretch ourselves and we can continue to be more joyful in that way. Because just seeing that video, like it's amazing to me how many people connected to Jenna's video. You know, she wasn't aware of that. She was just living her life, you know? And so I think the more that we can make spaces like that, the more of those beautiful moments can happen.
Well, I love the way you use the fact that you use the word joy, because I think everyone who sees Hamilton experiences a joy in the production. And so much of it comes from representation in the cast that most of us have never seen before. Right. And that was an experience, such a unique experience of joy for so many. I like that you said that.
Yeah, it was definitely like in that moment so joyful. And also I think like what's also important to acknowledge is that we are seeing these voices and bodies of people of color telling this traditionally like white history. And I think that there is a joy in it, but also there might be a discomfort in it, or there might be a questioning in it. Like, oh, this is making me feel conflicted because most of these white historical figures were slaveholders, and that makes me feel a certain way. But I think that's what's so great about theater and what's so great about storytelling is that so often it's to show us, right? It's to give us the tools to be able to like look at ourselves and say, oh, like I've never thought about it in that way before, but because that specific actor is telling this specific story, now all of a sudden I'm aware of it. So I'm not only like just super joyed to be a part of something so diverse and so culturally diverse, but also that I get to see how it's affecting people and see the impact that it has.
Kind of, you taught me something about after seeing the show 3 times plus on Disney. You just kind of taught me something more about it as well, and thinking about that, because I think you're right, and I kind of wondered why the power of seeing Daveed Diggs and Christopher Jackson playing slave owners, right, was immense. You know, I feel obliged, and there's a note to me here to tell the audience, in case there's anyone who has been in suspended animation for the last 5 years, to explain a little bit about Hamilton, that it's the story of America then, told by America now. It has a score that blends hip hop, jazz, R&B, and Broadway. It's taken the story of America's founding father, Alexander Hamilton, and it's created this incredible moment in theater. One of the most important things to note is that the show is called Hamilton, and there are two Hamiltons, Alexander and Eliza. I saw a really interesting article in Cinema Blend that actually posited that the name Hamilton is about your character, Eliza Hamilton, really, and that's given the structure of the play and so on, and the arc of the story. And again, I feel weird trying to not reveal details about something that I feel like is kind of foundational to so many people's awareness right now. But in any event, that Eliza's role in the arc of it is central to the naming as well. It was a really interesting article to read and see. Like on that, I mean, I think this must have been, we were just talking about your being at Juilliard, and then very soon after Juilliard, you joined, you originated the role of Eliza first off Broadway at the Public Theater, and then took the character to Broadway. The show it's now on Disney Plus for all of us lucky enough to have the service to see with the original cast, and to see it in such a great form. I recommend it highly. The show just keeps on giving us more. Was there a big moment? Like, what was your reaction when you found out you were going to Broadway with the show, that the show was going to Broadway?
I was obviously so excited. But also, I think my brain exploded. I mean, anybody's brain would explode, I guess. Because, that's like an actor's dream, is to be able to be on Broadway. And it's such a rare thing. And for that show to be my first Broadway show, for my Broadway debut was doing Hamilton. I felt this immense pressure, and also at the same time, like, this excitement that, like, yes, like, this is the time, like, this is the time to be a part of this city, and how lucky we are, right? How lucky we are to be alive right now. It was sort of like,
in the greatest city in the world. Yeah,
that was like what was happening inside of me at that very moment.
So, I mean, this is an abrupt change of subject, but I'll make it. Is something that I didn't pick up on as much listening to the album, or even when I saw it on stage, but became really clear seeing the show live, was your talent as a beatboxer.
Thank you.
And I found a YouTube video that has a number of clips of you in different situations beatboxing.
Yeah, well, it was a very magical day in rehearsal when we were blocking the show and we got to that part, and the beatboxing wasn't necessarily in the score yet. And Lynn was like, "So can you beatbox?" And I was like, "Can I? I've been preparing it for weeks." Like, I was so excited. Because like, I don't get to rap in the show. I'm the only one who doesn't rap. But no, I get to do a bunch of other cool things. That's totally.
Yeah.
But
you're holding out the hope we can see you rap at some point in the future.
Totally. There's some rap in one of my future projects, so that people will get to hear that. Ooh. So that's kind of cool.
So how much more? I mean, other than the beatboxing, I mean, you originated the character with Lynn. How did you help create the character? How did you create the character? Make Eliza you, and you Eliza? Other than the beatboxing, tell us more.
I mean, that was it. It was beatboxing, and then there she was. No, it's a collaborative process. Certainly, that's the reason why actors and directors and writers, so often in developing shows, you work on them before they go into production. So before we were off Broadway, we were doing these workshops and these sessions, these readings to try and develop this show and get our mind around what this story was. And mostly that is to serve the playwright so that they can work out the kinks in the story and they can develop the story with live actors in front of them. Because it is such a collaborative process. You know, you learn something as an actor, you learn something by being in the room. Doing it alone by yourself, it's great. But like the whole point is that whatever is happening is because you are interacting with your fellow actors. So Eliza was definitely a collaboration between Lynn and myself and Tommy Kail and even Alex Lackmore, who was arranging the music. There were a lot of things musically that we were playing with because of certain things that I could be doing with my voice that might not have been written. Certainly with the Schuyler sisters, all of those harmonies came in a little bit later after Lynn realized that we could all sort of jam together, and that was like really magical.
Wow.
I mean, there
are such magical moments in the show. Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of like, you know, research, and I think one of the most important aspects was getting to know Graham Windham, which is Eliza Hamilton's legacy. At the end of the show, if you've heard the album, she mentions, I established the first private orphanage in New York City, and that orphanage still exists today as a social service organization that helps kids and young people and their families in the New York City area. And they're still doing that today. And I got to connect with them and meet some of the students that were there. And Morgan Marcel, who's an ensemble member in the show from the original cast, she and I created the Eliza Project, which was essentially just a way to get into a room with some of the students of Graham Windham and do some like arts classes and teach some singing and acting and improv. And at the end of the day, maybe create some of their own work. But to use the magic and the power of art to be able to create a connection and uphold Eliza's legacy, and just to get to know each other, really, because I was singing about this place every night, and so I felt, I got to know what this is all about. And after that, I felt like, I mean, what's more incredible than being able to get to know a person from history through their living, breathing legacy? I mean, that's incredible. You can look at as many paintings and statues and history books as you want, and those facts are great, but those emotional connections that you can have with someone who has been off of this planet for hundreds of years and somehow feel connected to them is quite powerful.
And it's so powerful to think that your connection with her and that character led to your connection with Graham Windham and with those kids, right?
Yeah, I was so grateful.
So, hey, I would love to talk to you more about Hamilton, and every person who knows me has asked me to ask you about the gasp. But before we get to the gasp, I wanted to talk about what's happened since. Hoped you could talk about what's happened since. I mean, for starters, you did Emily, you did a show for CBS, now a bunch of film and screen projects. Like, how has the work changed? How is the work different to TV, film? What changed for you in kind of approaching those different mediums?
I think someone once told me that truth has no size. And I think that's true. Like, I think acting on camera versus acting on stage has very different requirements in terms of stamina, in terms of skill set. It's definitely a shift. But I think at the end of the day, through all of the things that you're trying to navigate, whether it be, you know, technical aspects, or if you're on stage and you're wearing like a corset or something that's sort of like might be throwing you off, or something that's like not necessarily realistic on stage, you know, if you're on camera, like, yeah, you're drinking an actual glass of water. There's actually water in your cup, but there's a bunch of other things that aren't necessarily real. And so in shifting into the film and TV world, I actually learned a lot about how they're actually very similar. That there's a very similar thing that happens when you are doing tech on stage, which is a couple of weeks leading up to our first performances. We go into the theater from the rehearsal room and we sort of put the show together. We get in costumes and makeup for the first time. The lights are there for the first time. And you're just sort of like navigating through the show that you've rehearsed. And that process to me is very similar to film and TV, because it's the first time you're there, and sometimes the first time you're meeting all of these people and new faces, and the first time that you're kind of saying these lines under the lights. So the minute that I was like, oh, okay, I see what this is, it's sort of like it all comes back and it all feels a little bit more seamless, because you're not trying to feel like, you know, more natural, I guess. Like I was like, this is the most unnatural thing in the world. This is where the acting comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, just as as a lover of theater and film, comparing the experience of acting in a theater to what the pictures I've seen on set, it just seems like you must be in such a radical. I mean, your surroundings are so radically different, and the way, like, you don't have an audience to engage with, and so on, just seems a world apart.
Yeah, but I think the biggest difference though in my process is that on stage, like, what you see is because of what I am bringing. Mm-hmm. And for film and TV, what's being seen is edited together. So, you know, you're your own editor when you're on stage.
Oh.
And it happens live in front of people. But film and TV, you know, you get a couple of tries. You say, well, I really like the first take, but the second take I like the beginning of, but not the end of, you know, and that's when they can craft these beautiful performances. And you know, it's what I love so much about what I do, is that everyone has such an important job, and putting my faith in the hands of an expert who knows exactly what they're doing in an editing room is exciting to me, because then I get to see that final product and get to celebrate that work.
So you've done some animated projects now, and how different is doing voice and working on animateds from everything else? It's
very different. I mean, you know, the biggest difference is that you're not working with actors generally. I was working on Over the Moon, which is the Netflix animated film that's coming out this fall. And sometimes I was in the room with my fellow actors, but most of the time I was alone in a booth with my headphones on. I had my lines in front of me, and, you know, you sort of go piecemeal through the lines. And that's it. Like it feels very much like, okay, so it's just me. And then a magical thing happens and you get to see it all put together, and you feel like you actually were in the room. And that's how amazing these animators and storytellers are, because they've crafted this story from these individual sessions and make it feel human and alive and so wonderful. So when I first saw Over the Moon, I was like just astounded. I was just so excited. And it's quite beautiful. Glenn Keane, our director, just is a lover of stories. And I learned so much from him, because he really understands how to use your voice to create a character and how that fits into a big puzzle. So that was really cool. It's so fun. I have to give a huge shout out to Kathy Young, who is playing Fei Fei, the little girl. She's so good. And she's just like the most wonderful, wholesome, precious version of this little girl. So I'm excited for people to see her work.
Hey, you know, I've got to point out, you have a lot of stuff coming out this summer. Right? the Hamilton on Disney. You're in a live action movie, Broken Hearts, coming out very soon. I think there's Over the Moon, which we just saw, the one and only Ivan coming out later. And I think all of these, from what I've seen, I mean, it certainly touches on this theme of representation and more diverse stories to tell. Really fascinating. Is this keeping you really busy, having 3, 4 productions to?
Yes. Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's like there's only so much that I can do in terms of promoting these wonderful films that I got to work on because it's a pandemic and obviously I'm not going anywhere. However, I'm super excited that these 4 projects that I've been working on for the past, well, I guess we filmed Hamilton in 2016. So it's been 4 years. These 4 projects are all coming out in the next like 4 months, which is so cool. And it's a wonderful surprise because I didn't find out about most of these films until only like a few months ago. So it's so exciting. I'm really excited for the animated films as well as the Broken Hearts Gallery. Broken Hearts Gallery I just shot last summer, and that was
Really?
really fun. It's a comedy, so it's very different from Eliza. So if you're wondering if I can also do comedy, yes, I can. You can see it in that film. It was really fun. I got to work with Geraldine Viswanathan and Molly Gordon. They were my 2 scene partners most of the time, and they're so phenomenal. They're so talented. A lot of what we get to do is a fun friendship story between these 3 women, and it's a love letter to New York. It's a love letter to.
I'm so glad you said that. I was going to say, I was lucky enough to see a screener, and I was going to say, I'm a New Yorker. I love the city, and I felt so much like it hit me. What a love letter this is to the city. And
Yeah.
I mean, it is funny and it is poignant and many other things.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I'm excited about people getting to see that.
Really cool. All right. So I think we're going to be getting to questions in just a few minutes. And I should remind our watchers again to put your questions in the comments section on the right. And I promise you, we'll get to your questions very, very soon. I just 1 or 2 thoughts or questions I just couldn't resist to end with before we move to those. Is there, I guess the first one is there some dream role you've always wanted to play? Have you had there's a character you've always wanted to be?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think a lot of female actresses say this, but I love Hedda Gabler. I think that's a really cool, interesting character. I would love to eventually play Lady M at some point. That's exciting to me. What else? Yeah, those are the only 2 like at the front of my mind. But I'm into things that are a little messy.
Yeah.
I think that's where my heart wants to go.
My next question was actually going to be, what attracts you to a project or to a script?
The writing, I mean, if a story is good, and the writing is good, I feel like I'm there. It doesn't necessarily matter what it's about, if it's funny, if it's dramatic, if it's tragic, if it's happy. I love good storytelling. And secondly, also, who's working on it. I just feel like the reason why I love this job and why I've been so fortunate is because I've been in these amazing rooms with amazing people. So the collaboration process certainly is really important to me. So I love being in rooms with people that are smarter than me and know more than me and can ask me to take risks and hold the bar high because all we want to do is make good work. So that's it for me.
So listen, we're about to get to questions, but I promised many people, some of whom have significant roles in my life, that I would ask you what you might want to say about the gasp. And
the gasp heard round the world. It's so interesting. It's hard to talk about the gasp because when I was performing the show, the gasp first of all, was not always the gasp. It sort of developed throughout the process and the off-Broadway process into the Broadway process. Tommy Kail and I had a lot of conversations about what is that gasp and solidifying it and trying to like actually create a moment, because it didn't happen until there was an audience in there. And part of my experience in finding the gasp the first time was because he leads me to the edge of the stage and I look out and all I see are these beautiful faces and they're all looking at me like, and I felt the same way, so it was almost like it came from that to begin with. And then of course, as you're doing a run as an actor, you're trying to find new, fresh ways to tell the story that still live within the realm of the blocking that you've set. And it became about, some nights it was about Eliza, like seeing something, like she sees her children, she sees Graham Windham, she sees her husband again. And then some nights, because it was such an amazing experience for me as an actor and as a human, I was so young, there were so many firsts that were happening for me in that moment. It was about like Phillipa Soo looking out and being like, I can't believe what I just did a show for the president or whatever, it changed every single day. So to get back to my point, what's interesting about this gasp is it was never set, like there was no like, and this is what it means during the run until it was captured. And now that version of the gasp, out of the hundreds of times that the gasp had happened, is the gasp that everyone is talking about.
Even though
I don't think I could tell you exactly what I was thinking or seeing or acting in that moment because it was constantly changing and it was about the exploration. But I just find it so interesting that the gasp is like, it's so mysterious to people now that it's been captured and set, and we can go back and watch it over and over again and analyze it. And I know that it's going to kill people when I say it's different for every actor and every person who's ever done it. And it had been different for me every single night that I was on that stage. And so I guess my only answer to the question is a question, which is, well, what do you think? What do you think it is?
I doubt our audience wants to hear my opinion, but what I will say is that it seems to me like it is, like it's pure theater, right? In that it says something that's an emotional truth, right? That doesn't have words. And I think that's this power that drama and theater have, right? Is to convey something meaningful, right? And many people really feel like, and I'm probably one of them, feels like Hamilton, it's super meaningful to them and transformational on how they, there's in your life, there's before you saw Hamilton and there's after. And I think it's kind of amazing that there can be this moment that it concludes with where there's this emotional connection that doesn't have words. And of course, like dreams, emotions, it can mean what it means. I would expect in any performance might have been different to everyone in the audience. And I think that's kind of, for me, that's one of the wonderful things about the experience of having seen it.
I mean, and I will say one thing about that moment that was very intentional was the idea of Hamilton and Eliza coming together. He takes her hand, but then he leads her and there's like a forward movement out. Like that's an intentional thing physically that was happening every day. So that's no mistake, but everything in that, that's sort of for people to put into it what they feel in their hearts.
Wow. Hey, another abrupt transition, but I think we need to get to audience questions now.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first question from Jen. Hi, do you have any insights or stories on what it was like growing up and being in the industry as mixed race?
I mean, here's what's so interesting, which is I started working at a pretty young age, and I was about like 12 years old, I think, when I started like going out on auditions and doing some like print ads and commercials and stuff. And I remember specifically like having a conversation or hearing about a conversation where there was a question about like, should I change my last name to be less Asian sounding, which is what a lot of women did. Not necessarily like just people of color or Asian last names, but like I had friends who were a little bit older than I that went to drama school, and their actor name, you know, they had a very Irish last name, and they wanted to change it to sound less Irish, you know. So it's just interesting to me that conversation has changed a lot. In fact, like I think more and more people are excited by unique last names because they want to know your story and who you are and where you're from. But the only advice that I can say is that being your truest self, no matter who you are, where you come from, where you were born, where you were raised, is always better when you're trying to bring a part of yourself to an audition or to a room or to a piece than trying to steer away from who you are. And so I think, you know, as much as you can, just like always go towards that person inside who is your most truest self.
Wow. All right. So from Terrence Brooks, given that the pandemic has impacted theater programs at high schools, any advice for current high school theater kids on how to maximize this time for their performing arts college dreams?
Yeah. It's, first of all, a really hard time to be a student. I cannot imagine what it's like, first of all, to be a student, but also to be a theater student and have to go to college or go to classes for theater that's live on a computer screen in your house, like alone. It's really hard. And if you're doing it, I applaud you, and just know that you will get something out of it, even if it is like your Zoom fatigue is really high, that like you can still get something out of it. But know that it's okay if you feel like that's not what it is, because it's not. I think like what's so great about this time that we live in is we have access to all of this content, like, you know, Netflix and Disney Plus. Like there's all of these streaming platforms where you can literally just scroll through and find something and expose yourself to all these different kinds of stories. So I would say like watch and absorb as much as you can. You know, you can even go on YouTube. I'm sure there's videos of like old movies and things that you can't necessarily find on streaming. Like just go searching, use technology to your benefit. And when you're watching these things, don't just say like, oh, I like that, I don't like that. Like analyze it, like ask yourself, like, what did I like about that performance? And what about that felt too big to me? Or like, why am I disconnected from this? Is it because this person is acting strangely, or is this about the lighting? Like you can analyze it for yourself and give yourself a lesson in acting and cinematography and filmography or not filmography, but you know what I mean? By just like in film, by just like looking and seeing what is before you and like giving yourself a rundown of the reasons why you like it and the reasons why you don't like it.
So from Brendan Chan, besides supporting organizations like the Actors Fund, what are the best ways that we can help support the arts and people who work in the arts who are facing the immense challenges due to COVID-19?
That's a great question. And I'm going to actually right now plug an email that I just got from my friend about support for the arts, because right now we're dealing with a time where artists are really struggling and it's so hard to get funding. So let me just read this. And I know this is not like off the cuff, and I'm sorry, but I'm just going to read from this if that's okay. The US Senate must pass emergency arts relief by August 1st. Without federal pandemic unemployment compensation, COBRA subsidies, and direct relief, arts workers will face eviction, bankruptcy, sickness, and irreparable damage to their livelihood and well-being. Contact your senators and ask them to pass this relief by August 1st. and ask them to be an arts hero. And they can go to a website called beanartshero.com to learn more and take action. But we're all like really struggling, but I think it's important to remember that the arts are important, and supporting the artists that make it is also important, so that we can continue to create things, create pieces of art that are going to shed light on things like the corruption happening in the White House, for example. So if you can, like, check it out, support, call your senators. We would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, I think we have time for only one last question. From Ashley Lau. Hi, Phillipa. Have you ever faced imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with it?
Yes. And by remembering that a lot of people feel that, and it's normal. And I think, like, it's really important to remember that when you're worried or concerned about something, or you feel like you're not worthy, there is an element of you care. Like, that's because you care about something. Because if you didn't care, you'd probably be like, oh, whatever. Like, I guess that's just not for me. But there are moments where I feel like, oh, do I belong here? Like, ooh. And that's because I'm, like, concerned that, like, maybe I don't, but I care about it. And so in those moments, I feel like it's always more important to direct my attention to why I feel that way, because I really care about this, or because I want a message to get across, or because I'm in love with this story, and if I don't tell it right, are people going to judge me for that? But the care in it is what's important about that. So imposter syndrome, totally normal. If you can look at it from a couple different sides, maybe you'll figure something else out, or you'll discover why you're feeling that way.
Thank you. Hey, listen, I think we're at the end of our time. So let me thank you again. I think there's a shout out here to Be an Arts Hero at beanartshero.com.
Right.
Phillipa, thank you so much for making the time, for answering my questions and our audience's questions. It's been great to have you.
Thank you. It's been so nice to be here. Thanks, everybody.